afternoon to our students, faculty, staff, and guests. Welcome to the University of Maine at Augusta's 2021 Convocation. I would like to extend a special welcome to our rising scholars, each of whom have been nominated for recognition by a member of our faculty or staff. Before we begin our program, it is important that we acknowledge the following. The University of Maine at Augusta recognizes that its campuses and centers are located in the homeland of the Wabanaki tribal nations, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We support their efforts for land and water protection and restoration, and for cultural healing and recovery. We are grateful to be able to live and work in the state of Maine, where we hope to play a more active role in the decolonization process. Making this acknowledgement is one part of UMA's rededication to better support the Wabanaki in our state. Other efforts underway include a new course this spring in tribal law, another plan for next year on Maine's indigenous communities and culture, and multiple forthcoming events that will help us explore this year's academic theme. Most importantly, we are extremely honored to have the Honorable Donna as our keynote speaker today. She has spent most of her life in service to the advocacy and representation of Maine's indigenous communities. Her address later in our program, as well as her participation as one of several distinguished panelists at next week's Maine's Mid-Century event on Indigenous Mid-Century Maine, will serve to further our university's community's commitment to anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Every year, the Colloquium Committee selects a topic of national importance and relevance to our community and state. Some of the previous topics were outbreak, climate change, freedom of speech, to name a few. And this year's topic, race and social justice, again, calls us as a university and a community to face head-on one of the more challenging topics there is. So let me thank the Colloquium Committee for their work and for helping us focus our academic year theme on race and social justice. This topic requires us to confront our imperfect past, assess where we are today, and envision the world in which we want to live going forward. These are difficult but needed discussions, a dialogue that must be had if we ever hope to make progress. I would like to read to you a quote from this year's theme-related book, Caste, and Origins of Our Discontent by Isabella Wilkerson. America is an old house. We can never declare the work over. Wind, flood, drought, and human upheavals batter a structure that is already fighting whatever flaws were left unattended in the original foundation. When you live in an old house, you may not want to go into the basement after a storm to see what the rains have wrought. Choose not to look, however, at your own peril. The owner of the old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Whatever is lurking will fester whether you choose to look or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequence of inaction. Our work on UMA's old house continues, physically and figuratively. Our desire and continued efforts remain for UMA to be a reflecting and welcoming place for all who want to learn. Our work on our physical house, our new Welcome Center, Learning Commons, meditation and prayer space are tangible representations. A more systematic commitment is also reflected in our strategic plan, which identifies diversity, equity, and inclusion as an important pillar in shaping the university for the future. As a university focused on teaching and learning, I have charged all our academic programs to use the necessary tools to begin to implement the needed repairs to our house, and acknowledge that there are still many, many more repairs needed. As we start this academic year, I challenge our faculty to find opportunities to invite students into a dialogue in a respectful and civil manner. Challenge the students to continue to be willing to explore and engage in these important topics. Challenge us all to find the strength to have these uncomfortable discussions. One of the first papers I came across early in my graduate education was a paper entitled Natural Neighborhood Sorting on the N-Dimensional Sphere. Yes, a real page turner. And it triggered a love for computational geometry for me and a confidence in knowing that there are always similarities to be found if we are willing to work for it. Isabella Wilkerson gives us that path. Find commonalities, find what makes us alike, and good things will come from those efforts. And if we do that, there is hope, as Wilkerson notes in Cast. He bounded out of the old house and into the light of day. The pride I have in working for this education institution is great. And education, done well, provides enlightenment. We can and should be that light that guides our home repairs. We will now recognize our rising scholars and announce the recipients of the Distinguished Educator and the Distinguished Scholar Awards. I would like to begin this year's academic recognition with the first of 3 segments honoring UMA student rising scholars. The Rising Scholars Initiative was developed to honor and recognize student achievement and/or student promise and potential. Rising scholars are nominated by faculty and staff. Some of these rising scholars have already achieved wonderful things while at UMA. Some have shown tremendous promise. Some have both achieved and show promise. And we are so proud of all of them and delighted to have the privilege to teach and work with them during this crucial time in their lives. We are honoring 86 rising scholars today. This is the first of 3 video presentations recognizing their achievements.
Nada Al-Hosen, Tim Aderhold, Isaiah Anderson, Zachariah Asbury, Lindsay Arlo, Cassie Bates, Alicia Bell, Marisha Bernard, Kaz Bessie Pease, Erica Bowden, Galen Brackett, Amanda Brown, Connor Burns, Mark Cardelli, Kristen Cartier, Dana Clark, Train Corliss, Amanda Costa, Brian Curry, Linda Doloff, Colleen Dove, Jason Downing, Amanda Downing, Desiree Dumas, Alexis Eldridge, Libby Fairfield Phelps. Barclay Fink.
We will honor more rising scholars shortly, but now I have the pleasure of announcing the Distinguished Educator Award. The Distinguished Educator Award recognizes a faculty member who demonstrates an understanding of their profession, strives to inspire students' intellectual curiosity, and honors their academic achievements. A distinguished educator has a selfless approach to teaching, has energy and optimism to motivate students, and demonstrates a consistent desire to create an invigorating environment which students learn and grow. I am pleased to announce this year's Distinguished Educator Award goes to Dr. Wendy St. Pierre. Dr. St. Pierre is a valued faculty colleague whose work has been devoted to this university. She joined the UMA faculty in the fall of 2018 and was named Mental Health and Human Services Program Coordinator in fall of 2020. Wendy has worked with other faculty to design MHHS's first graduate offering, a substance use disorder graduate certificate. UMA accepted 20 students into that program in fall of 2020, many of whom were awarded the certificate at the end of this summer's semester. Wendy worked diligently with other faculty to earn national accreditation from the Council for Standards in Human Service Education for our UMA Mental Health and Human Services degree. Wendy teaches in a variety of course modes, online, HighFlex, web conferencing. She consistently receives positive student evaluations. Students value her devotion to teaching, explaining, and making complex theories easy to understand. Students say they would certainly recommend Dr. St. Pierre's courses to all students, not just those in mental health. Besides her teaching and devotion to the mental health program, Wendy serves on the UMA Faculty Senate, UMA's Academic Policy Committee, and works as an advisor for the MHHS Club across campuses and centers. She developed the University of Maine System Behavioral Health Collaborative, comprised of 5 faculty across the University of Maine system, to discuss opportunities for collaboration in human services, rehabilitation, and social work. She is an active member of the Maine Behavioral Health Workforce Development Collaborative and is a member of the Maine Department of Health and Human Services Child Welfare Field Instruction Design Team. She has also been named to the Kennebec Valley Community Action Program's Child Abuse and Neglect Council. For her dedication to students and her profession, UMA awards the 2021 Distinguished Educator Award to Dr. Wendy St. Pierre. Congratulations, Wendy. We will now view our second video presentation recognizing additional 2021 Rising Scholars.
Jackson Fortin, Hannah Gamble, Ben Godfrey, Xavier Gomez, Cameron Gooley, Emily Grieve, Sarah Griffin, Dorian Gurian, Tanya Hamilton, Thaddeus Jeswowicz, Lucas Knowles, Jessica Kofadisa, Virginia LaFlame, Rachel Lemansky, David Leone, Carla Leon Contreras, Derek Libby, Kathleen Libby, Zanuck Lindsay, Rachel Cherry London, Sheila Lynch, Audrey McGee, Bruno Mendez de Freias, Maria Miranda, Allison Mitchell, Perla Mogul, Bella Moody, Nathan Morton, Katie Philbrick,
We will honor our last set of rising scholars shortly, but first I am pleased to announce the Distinguished Scholar Award. The Distinguished Scholar Award is presented annually to a faculty member whose scholarly accomplishments demonstrate exceptional achievement. A distinguished scholar has intellectual curiosity, innovation, commitment, integrity, and perseverance, and pursues academic excellence through research, publication, and/or creative activities. Their scholarly work, which enrich the academic discipline, reflect positively on the community and university and enhance future teaching and learning. This year's Distinguished Scholar Award recipient is Con Sullivan, Assistant Professor of Biology. Dr. Sullivan joined UMA as an Assistant Professor of Biology in spring of 2018. He earned his Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science in Biology from Adelphi University and his PhD in Biochemistry and Molecular Biology from the University of Maine. He went on to complete 2 postdoctorate appointments at the Jackson Laboratory and the Maine Institute for Human Genetics and Health, and served in multiple roles at the University of Maine for close to 7 years before coming to UMA. The overarching goal of his current research is to investigate the mechanisms that initiate and sustain inflammation following viral infection to better understand the dysregulation process of hyperinflammation. Since joining UMA, he has been eager to develop undergraduate research projects that are based in molecular and cellular biology and bioinformatics. Con has been very successful in building undergraduate research opportunities into his classes such as microbiology, pathophysiology, applied bioinformatics, and a senior level biology research laboratory course. Students learn applied molecular skills, including cell cultures, quantitative polymerase chain reactions, PCR, and bioinformatics. These laboratory and bioinformatics research projects allow UMA students to be more competitive for research technician and graduate student positions, as well as for pursuing dental, veterinary, and medical school. Con has dedicated a significant amount of time building a research space in Camden Hall on the UMA Bangor campus and seeking financial support to equip this lab. Since 2018, he has been awarded an impressive number of internal and external grants, including a Maine Economic Improvement Fund Small Campus Initiative grant, a National Institute of Health grant as a co-investigator with a colleague at UMaine, 3 separate presidential research grants, and a Strategic Development Fund grant. Additionally, he has been thoroughly involved in the process of construction, selection, and installation of equipment and stocking the laboratory supplies. Con's research publication and review list is extensive. Recently, he was first author on a review paper, Modeling Virus-Induced Inflammation in Zebrafish, a balance between infection and control and excessive inflammation in the Frontiers of Immunology. He reviews articles for numerous peer-reviewed journals, including but not limited to the International Journal of Molecular Sciences and Environmental Pollution. In addition to his laudable scholarship endeavors, Khan has provided a significant amount of service to UMA as a representative on the Faculty Senate, a recent Biology Faculty Search Committee, the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, and our Biosafety Committee. In recognition of his great strides in building a research program and his dedication to teaching and university and community service, UMA awards the 2021 Distinguished Scholar Award to Dr. Khan Sullivan. Congratulations, Khan. We will now view our final video presentation honoring UMA's 2021 Rising Scholars.
Sylvia Phillips. Catherine Pierce. Cindy Poley. McKenna Porter. Blake Proctor. Adam Ranco. Juan Ricardo. Camila Rowe. Isaac Sachs. Rowan Saucier. Brittany Shearer. Abby Small. Cody Smith. Caleb Stahl. Sabrina Stover. Tiffany Swopes. Bethany Sykes. Jeannie Thompson. Shauna Tierney. Heidi Toner. Hannah Tice. Michael Umaum. Lauren Underhill. Quinn Vinyl. Hillary Ware. Lisa Wilkinson. Paula Wilson. Martina Wing. Odette Zuri.
Congratulations to all our 2021 Rising Scholars. Specially designed certificates will be mailed to each Rising Scholar along with a pin commemorating this achievement. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge our returning Rising Scholars who were especially invited to join this webinar. That concludes the awards for this year. We have now arrived at the point of the program where we will focus on our academic theme of race and social justice. I would like to introduce Dr. Robert Bernheim, UMA Assistant Professor of History, who will provide the faculty perspective on this year's theme. Dr. Bernheim teaches courses in history and in our Holocaust, genocide, and human rights minor as well as restorative justice courses in the Justice Studies program. In 2019, he received the Distinguished Educator Award. I welcome Dr. Bernheim to the podium.
I used to cross Adolf Hitler Street every day when I was a student in Germany, only it had long lost the name Hitler Street and reverted to its pre-war name, Kaiser Joseph Straße, or Emperor Joseph Street, Caillou for short. The street in Freiburg am Breisgau itself is some 600 years old, and although it was only Hitler Street for close to 10 years, it had still been Hitler Street. Likewise, there are scores of other former Hitler streets across Germany, Austria, and other parts of Europe, and even in Brazil and in New York. But as in Freiburg, these streets no longer bear the name of the Nazi dictator. So why are there virtually no more Hitler streets left in the world today? Because these communities and nations have had a series of encounters with an ugly genocidal past that is often difficult to face, but absolutely necessary in moving forward. And the changing of street names is just one manifestation of these crucial reckonings with the past. It is likewise an arduous but vital reckoning with a deep, troubled, and nasty past that our own country is currently undergoing. Conversations about race and social justice are at the forefront of policy and decision-making, as well as community and family relations. And it is this imperative topic of race and social justice that anchors our academic theme this year. So today, I have been asked and invited to deliver the faculty perspective on this pressing topic. In all honesty, this is both overwhelming and awkward. Yet I am grateful to UMA Interim President Szakas, Deans McAleer and McCrae, and the entire academic theme committee for the opportunity to contribute to this ongoing conversation during Convocation. But I will do so today with a couple of caveats. First, the obvious. I'm a man, I'm white. So what could, and I come from a place of privilege as a result. So what could I possibly know or have to say about race and social justice? But second, I'm an historian by trade and training, and this gives me observer status. And with this set up front, I would like to focus my comments from the perspective of the latter as an historian and examine for a moment how an encounter I had in Germany helps me frame several key components of race and social justice from a privileged position that may just promote and provoke some further conversation and collective community and individual retrospection, beginning here among UMA students, faculty, staff, and guests. So when I'm in Germany, I engage in a lot of mental calculus, paying attention to that Hitler Street thing. I can't help it. For me, the landscape of loss there is palpable. Perhaps my own family history of death and destruction at the hands of the Nazis and the silence that followed among surviving relatives drives me to uncover and write my own story. All I know is that when I'm in Germany, or even in the nations that the Germans occupied and pillaged, I am acutely aware of the ways in which the Nazi past and democratic present interact, intersect, and sometimes clash. I once mentioned this mental calculus thing when I spoke in a German university class taught by a dear friend. In the awkward silence that followed, a brave soul in the class raised his hand and asked, "Professor Bernheim, when you wake up at your home, do you think about what took place among the Native American population just outside your front door? Do you consider how your country and your state subjected the indigenous peoples of your region to unspeakable horrors? How about your treatment of the Black African slave population that you kidnapped from their homes thousands of miles away and imprisoned and worked to death among those great United States of yours? We know that slavery exists still in the land of the free and the brave. Do you? Need I also ask you, Professor Bernheim, about the rights denied to the Franco community in Maine, or the rights and status of women, Chinese, Mexican, Irish immigrants, South Asian immigrants, people of all different races and ethnicities, homosexuals, the mentally ill, and all those others your government marginalized in its short history and are still marginalizing and persecuting? Rather than think so much about our German history, unsere deutsche Geschichte, are you thinking about your own American history, ihre eigene amerikanische Geschichte? The discomfort in that room now rested squarely on me. 18 sets of eyes in a seminar for teachers to be locked me in place. Stunned. I had absolutely nothing to say. I deeply regretted even mentioning this. I began sweating profusely. A wave of nausea swept over me. I sat down, head bowed, my mind swimming, frantically searching for the right words to say in German to refocus attention back on the Nazi past and away from the US past and present. My friend tried to rescue me to change the subject, but I interjected. I found my voice. I stood up, shook my head from side to side, and I said, Nein, ich habe das nicht vorher überlegt. Nope, I hadn't thought of that before. That encounter helped change my perspective on how I view the topography of the past and its overlay on the present, as well as influencing how and what I teach. And it influences my privileged perspective today as I speak. As a result, I, as an historian and privileged observer, would like to leave us with 4 ongoing challenges when it comes to the process of individual and national reckoning with the truths of race and social justice, especially in this country. First, we all need our own encounter with the past. While this may not come in the form of another person putting us in the proverbial public hot seat, we can ask ourselves tough questions about our relationship to race and social justice. As the podcast Brave Little State from Vermont reminds us, be brave, ask questions. Some of us may reason, hey, I had nothing to do with slavery or kicking these indigenous people off their lands. I wasn't there. What's all this got to do with me? As Isabel Wilkerson so expressively reminds us in her 2020 best-selling study, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, that is this year's academic theme book, it's like buying the old house that President Szakas mentioned that needs some work. We weren't the ones who neglected the maintenance and caused the rot, but we own the house now. And we're accountable to make the repairs or face the consequences of further neglect. Second, facts and context matter when addressing issues of race and social justice. It seems we suffer from a poverty of truth, not because of its paucity, but because it's difficult to hear and accept difficult facts, especially when it comes to our nation's history. Discussions about displacements, gratuitous slaughter, and hard-hearted indifference and a lack of accountability and justice for countless generations are just as much of a realistic reading of American or world history as are the virtues of democracy, freedom, liberties, service above self, and a deep and abiding love and respect for our nation and its flag. Therein lies the context. We do a disservice by not accepting and discussing the whole picture of our past and present. Third, our conversation on race and social justice requires respect, humility, and compassion. History matters, truthful history matters, but compassion also counts, and it counts here too. We need to maintain respect and civility even when we vehemently disagree with each other or when others present outright falsehoods as facts. Why? Because to stoop to the level of abusive posturing, dehumanizing speech, and abject hatred is to ground any conversation to an immediate halt. In other words, a lack of compassion kills all efforts at reconciliation and restoration, important keys to examining issues of race and social justice in our society. Lastly, our encounter with race and social justice inevitably brings up what my father called the so what now question. He used to ask me, Robert, so you've taken this class, achieved this degree or distinction, learned this skill, or given some speech. So what? What now? What difference will this make in your life and the lives of those around you? Implicit in what he asked is the simple truth that to know means to do, that education can be a difference maker. And so in closing, I turn these questions on me as a way of asking all of us, so what? What now? What about me? What about all of us? Remember I mentioned Hitler Street. Hitler Street's long gone, but its legacy remains. I still think about it a lot. I must say, however, that I'm also learning to think more deeply about the displacement and genocidal slaughter of the indigenous peoples in North America and the Western Hemisphere. I'm learning to think more clearly about criminal enslavement of Africans and the subsequent still present invisible hierarchy that shackles their descendants and so many others in our caste system. And I'm learning to think much more about race and social justice in light of all of the historical truths of our collective past and present. How could I not? And yet I do so all the while embracing the unfettered joys, unfolding wonders, and unique blessings of freedom, liberty, and democracy in all their ideal states here in America. So what? What now? Let's keep this conversation going and be difference makers in this old house. Thank you very much.
Professor Bernheim, thank you for those important perspectives. And I believe we should all continue to ask these types of questions. It is now my pleasure to introduce our student speaker, Mohamed Khalid. Mohamed, a first-generation college student, will be completing his business administration degree this semester. A Portland resident, he balances his studies while working in the Maine State Senate Majority Office. Mohamed will present the student perspective on this year's academic theme.
Thank you for having me here today. I just want to thank the faculty. I want to thank the committee. I want to thank Professor Meckler for believing in me as a young man and as a student. I also want to thank my friends and family for always being by my side through this journey of mine that I'm still trying to navigate. I wasn't supposed to be here. My family and I arrived in the United States as refugees fleeing a war in Somalia. That we survived, got here at all was unlikely enough given the hundreds of thousands who didn't. But just getting to America wasn't the only obstacle to being here. Violence in my home country wasn't the only broader force conspiring against my ever graduating from college. In addition to being a refugee, I am a Black man in a society more interested in locking up people who look like me than in educating us. The Lil Baby said, in the bigger the picture, he said, throw us in handcuffs and arrest us while they go home at night. And that really spoke to me. The statistics tell a sobering story. Poor Black men in the United States are more likely to go to prison than college. Less than 20% of Black men ever earn a 4-year degree compared to those close to 40% of white people. Reduced educational opportunities lead to reduced earning potential. Black men end up poorer, sicker, and dying earlier because we lack the access to education that others take for granted. This educational disparity is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. Structural racism created it, and anti-racist work can dismantle it. What that means for us today is simple. As we go into the world, barriers of a degree marking us as an unusual, well-educated, and well-prepared to make our way in life, we have an obligation to put our newfound educational privilege to work in the fight for justice. Wherever our lives and careers take us, there will be the opportunities to weigh in on the side of a greater equity, greater opportunity to weigh in on the side of a fairer, freer country. Ultimately, this is the paradox and promise of America. The same country that enslaved people who look like me, the same country that beat them, lynched them, and denied them jobs and education, and a vote in our democracy, the same country also has been a refuge for people fleeing violence and oppression, and a beacon of opportunity for those seeking a better life. It is the country that welcomed me and my family, friends, and told us at the same time we weren't welcome, and then sent me through public school and off to university for an education people in the world, in much of the world, can only dream of. In other words, America is a contradiction. That I am standing here today is a testament to what this country can do, though. That there are so few like me who get the opportunity, the same opportunity. The same opportunity is a combination of what it chooses to leave undone. As we go off into the world of adult responsibilities and opportunities, let's commit ourselves to building a country where our children have a fairer future, where the color of their skin does not do so much to determine their destiny. My world civ professor, Professor Robert, said somewhere when I was reading his syllabus, he said, in the syllabus he talked about, with great educational opportunities comes great responsibility. Enough said, let's be the difference maker, in his words. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Mohamed, thank you for that powerful perspective. We should all acknowledge the contradictions we see, and removing those contradictions should be one of our most important tasks as we move forward. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Donna Loring. Donna is an elder and former council member of the Penobscot Nation. She held the position of the nation's representative to the Maine State Legislature for 12 years, ending her service in 2008. Her book entitled In the Shadow of the Eagle, a tribal representative in Maine, chronicles her experiences in the Maine State Legislature as a non-voting tribal representative. During her time in the Maine legislature, she authored and sponsored LD 291, an act to require teaching Maine's Native American history and culture in Maine schools, which Governor Angus King signed into law in 2001, which changed the way Maine views its history. Most recently, she was a senior advisor on the tribal affairs to Governor Janet Mills. Her professional background is in law enforcement, having served as the police chief of the Penobscot Nation from 1984 to 1990, and becoming the first woman police academy graduate to become police chief in the state of Maine. Donna is a Vietnam veteran, serving in Vietnam from November of 1967 to November of 1968 during the Tet Offensive. She hosts her own radio show, Wabanaki Windows, at WERU Community Radio in Orland. She is a graduate of the University of Maine at Orono, which also awarded her an honorary doctorate in humane letters in 2017. Among her many honors, Donna is the recipient of the University of New England's prestigious Deborah Morton Society Award and the Courage is Contagious Award, part of the University of Maine School of Law's Justice for Women lecture series. We are honored to welcome as the keynote speaker for this year's convocation, Donna Loring.
Thank you, Interim President Szakas, students, faculty, staff, and guests. It is a pleasure for me to speak to you at your convocation at the University of Maine at Augusta, especially at the beginning of your school year. Congratulations to the rising scholars. It is my wish that you continue rising, and your curiosity about Wabanaki people is piqued by my words, and that the campus community take the initiative in the coming year to learn more about Wabanaki people. I'm eager to talk about your theme for this year, race and social justice, and how it pertains to the Wabanaki tribes living in the area we now call the state of Maine. I am bookending my remarks with a quote from Chief Orono at the beginning, and a Martin Luther King Jr. quote at the end, in recognition of the fact that Maine owes its statehood to slaves and Indians. Slaves because Maine entered the Union on condition it became a free state, and Indians in the agreement with Massachusetts to accept its treaty obligations, which were written into the Articles of Separation, which are included in the Maine Constitution. George Washington wrote a letter to the Passamaquoddy and Penobscot tribes asking for their support in the Revolution. Chief Joseph Orono, my great-grandfather, 7 times removed, spoke in council in favor of providing that report. And I quote, "The great spirit gives us freely all things. Our white brothers tell us they came to Indian country to enjoy liberty and life, but a great Sagamore is coming to bind them in chains, to kill them. We must fight him, for should he bind them in bonds, next he will treat us like bears. He will tear away from us Indian liberties and land. We must help his ill-treated sons, for they will return good for good, and the law of love runs through their children. Look down the stream of time, look up to the Great Spirit." End of quote. George Washington, however, had other ideas. Colin Calloway, author of the book, The Indian World of George Washington, says, in the 18th century, Native people were everywhere. It was all about Indian land, which was the key to wealth, power, and growth of a nation. The American story is transforming Indian land into Indian real estate. George Washington, Henry Knox, Jefferson, and others were obsessed with obtaining land. Land was part of nation building. Without the land, there would be no America. It is no secret that the writers of the Constitution were all white men. They didn't have the same vision as we do today. It was a much different time with different goals. They had a template for expansion, using the Northwest Ordinance to create a process to statehood, first requiring a population of 5,000 to become a territory and 60,000 to become a state. Land was key to everything. This means that Indian people and Indian nations who are on the lands are in the way. The land was turned into property and real estate, needing to produce and pay for itself. This was a totally different dynamic from how Native people used land, a whole different cultural and spiritual transition. The state formation process commodified the land and other resources for marketing and capitalistic mode of production. It is in this time of capitalistic expansion that Maine became a state. Land was of primary importance. The tools and mechanisms used to get title to the land were deeds and treaties. Clear title was required as proof of ownership. There were millions of acres of land in Maine for the taking, and the greedy eyes of the land speculators, lumber barons, merchants, and bankers were on Maine. The newly formed federal government created a law that would control the sale of lands. They needed this control to keep order and build a nation. The 1790 Non-Intercourse Act was written to keep land acquisition in the control of the federal government and out of the hands of individuals and states. Massachusetts and others ignored the act and made treaties anyway. In 1796, the Penobscot treated with Massachusetts, giving away their land 6 miles on both sides of the Penobscot River, but keeping its 4 townships. The treaty was renewed in 1818 and again in 1820, making certain that the 4 townships were always kept. The 1820 treaty was negotiated with Maine as a requirement for Maine to become a state. Again, Maine owes its statehood to Indians and slaves, but acknowledges neither. Once Maine was recognized as a state, it set about taking Wabanaki lands. It sent out a surveying team to survey Penobscot lands within 6 months of statehood. The state agents were sent to negotiate the sale of the townships with orders to get the land any way they could. Remember, these were the townships preserved by treaty since 1796 and again in 1820. In 1833, in violation of the treaty, the 4 townships were fraudulently taken and transferred to the state of Maine, thus transferring over 95% of Penobscot land to the state. The state placed a sum of $50,000 into the Indian Trust Fund to pay for the townships. After the taking of the 4 townships, the state proceeded to take control of the tribal communities, placing an agent in charge of funding disbursements to the tribe and individuals for their living expenses. The money came from the Indian Trust Fund. The legislature then created laws to govern and control every aspect of tribal life. These laws were known as the Blue Book laws. The tribes turned to courts for justice. The judicial system was not the bastion of justice it claimed to be. Maine Supreme Court decisions ignored the state's treaty obligations to the tribes, and the effect of these rulings have caused irreparable damage. In 1842, Murch v. Toma, the first important tribal precedent-setting case, was decided. The case was about a promissory note signed by P.O. Toma, a member of the Penobscot Nation. This promissory note case got to the Maine Supreme Court. The court reached out to make a finding on tribal sovereignty. The precedent set by this case not only failed to recognize tribal sovereignty, but laid the foundation for a devastating case that came later in State v. Newell. Chief Justice Ezekiel Whitman, in the Murch decisions, uses legislative action of 1833 in the taking of the 4 townships to deny the nationhood and sovereignty of the Penobscot Nation. He states in his opinion, and I quote, "Is it insisted that the Penobscot tribe are a nation by themselves and independent? Our Constitution recognizes no such thing, and our legislation altogether forbids it." He goes on to say, "We have in express terms extended our legislation over them and over their territory, and have even presumed to appoint agents to manage the affairs of the Indians in reference to it. Although endowed with attributes belonging to our species, and in fact a portion of the human race, yet as a people, and as it were nationally and collectively, they are treated, and perhaps necessarily so, as having none of these attributes. Imbecility on their part and the dictates of humanity on ours have necessarily prescribed to them their subjugation to our paternal control, in disregard of some, at least, of abstract principles of the rights of man." End of quote. I find it absurd that Justice Whitman had forgotten, or most likely ignored, the existence of the 1820 treaty. His decision included some of the most insulting and discriminatory language that exists in Maine law. With these words, Whitman set the stage for future cases. He set the stage for Maine to take tribal lands without regard for federal Indian law or treaty obligations in the Act of Separation with Massachusetts. Maine government was free to do what it liked with Indian lands. The lumber barons and land speculators were the winners, and by 1844, the lumber industry was booming in Maine, and Bangor, Maine was the wealthiest city in the world. Although only until 1870s, when the railroads connected the western states with a means to transport vast amounts of lumber to the coast. In 1876, the legislature removed the section of the Maine Constitution that cited the treaty obligations to the tribes. Although removing it from public view, the Constitution stated it remained in full force. Later, in 1892, Maine Supreme Court decision in State v. Newell was a devastating one. It ruled, and I quote, "The Indian resident within the state are not Indian tribes, nor are they successors of any of the eastern tribes of Indians with whom treaties were made. Hence, they cannot claim any exemptions or privileges under such treaties." These two court decisions from Murch v. Tomer and State v. Newell effectively eliminated the tribes and their sovereign treaty rights. These decisions are cited today in various state and federal cases to disregard Wabanaki tribal sovereignty. Moving to more recent history, another example of this unfair and unjust legal system is the treatment by law enforcement, the courts, and the state attorney general of attorney Don Jellers. He worked for Pine Tree Legal and advocated for tribal rights, championed the tribal defendants in court. His fatal mistake was initiating a land claims in 1968 that affected 2/3 of the state of Maine. He never made it to court to argue that case. He was framed by the state police. The court system upheld his conviction. His crime, other than initiating land claims on behalf of the Passamaquoddy tribe, was that 2 marijuana cigarettes were found in the pocket of an old jacket in his closet inside his house. He was tried, convicted, sentenced to jail time, and later disbarred. Governor Mills issued a posthumous pardon in his name on January 10th, 2020, expressing her disappointment in the system. A final example. In November 2019, Acting Chief Justice of the Maine Supreme Court, Andrew Mead, wrote a letter to Kennebec County officials requesting the removal of a statue of U.S. Justice Melville Fuller, who had presided over and supported the 1896 decision in Plessy v. Ferguson. And this case was just 4 years after the Newell case, a case that set precedent for the segregation doctrine of separate but equal. Justice Mead wrote, quote, "Given our commitment to racial justice, we should take every opportunity to examine and re-examine our positions, policies, and practices," end of quote. In my opinion, there were far-reaching and unjust decisions made by the Maine Supreme Court in the past, decisions that used language effectively terminating entire tribal governments and made tribal citizens disappear with a stroke of a pen. Under the UN definition, this is genocide. The Maine courts have made decisions that laid the foundation for civil and human rights abuses against the Wabanaki people. A little self-examination is in order, starting from the redaction of Maine's treaty obligations to the tribes in the Maine Constitution, and including the first two Maine landmark tribal cases, Murch v. Toma and State v. Newell. These court opinions have assisted the state in its efforts to marginalize and eliminate the tribes. So perhaps now, with introspective Maine Supreme Court justices expressing their values, the court will revisit the history and importance of its own decisions. Maine needs to revisit the Constitution, and the Maine Supreme Court needs to revisit its false and fabricated cases that have set such harmful precedents. Finally, I leave you with the words of Martin Luther King Jr. in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, quote, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna Loring, for that powerful message. Let us hold firm to Donna Loring's words and be champions of unarmed truths, as difficult and as painful as they may be. As we close, I would like to take a moment to thank the Convocation Committee for organizing today's event. Thank you for everyone for tuning in today to begin our 2021-2022 academic year and the important theme of race and social justice. This concludes our Convocation event.